Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Jerry Wells Show. As was mentioned, it's brought to you by Kathy. Yeah, she makes the coffee, keeps us going. We first had our guest on. Our guest is Wayne Herschel. He's an author and a researcher who lives in South Africa. And what I'm talking about here is the potential for distant civilizations to have existed here on this world that number one, far exceeded the technological knowledge that people here have. And number two, and this is the most controversial, they might not have even originated here on this world.
Yeah, there's, I would say, a very common beginning with humanity. It's a worldwide thing. They all seem to start off the same obsessions: bull worship, sun worship. It's as if there's been a cosmic teacher visitation that's gone through all of the ancient civilizations.
And you found it, obviously. I mean, you've got, 3 different books out, is that right?
That's right. The first one was The Hidden Records. That's the star maps. That's our human bloodline origins.
And that's where
go ahead.
That's where we first made a connection, was that first book.
Yeah, the second book was literally the third book launched before its time, because we knew there would be interference, because the third book is the most controversial. This is what the aliens, our ancestors, are trying to tell us. What is their message, and how are we going to interpret it when the day comes for first contact? I knew that one would be the one that would really be in trouble, because that's really going over the line as far as revealing everything. So we launched that one early. And of course, without having the Atlantis story, that is the introduction to it, it looks like a very mishmash. What does it really mean? It's maybe a little bit thumbsucked, or all theory. But now that book is the third book that's going to follow after the book I've just launched now, which is Atlantis. It now is in its rightful place. I believe in free knowledge, so I've made a lot of it free on the website. If anybody wants to just see while they're listening to your audio, especially the listeners that don't have the visuals, go to thehiddenrecords.com and just type in the search window, whatever part of the story you're listening to on the radio, and you'll find it. The Atlantis book now, it's not just a theory on Atlantis. This is the part that I must stress. There's been so many books that have claimed this is Atlantis, we found it, and they bring out the most weird, twisted theories. There's a really big one you've probably heard about, the Richard structure. Yeah. The Sahara Desert is Atlantis. I mean, that is so far off track, but it's so well presented that it makes people think,
How did you come about finding what you believe is the actual location?
Yeah, if you just take Plato's works. Now, this is the thing. You take the Timaeus and the, what's the other one? I can't think of the name, but the 2 really big books by Plato, and get a Greek translator to give you a hand with the real translation. That's where you find a lot of things that are in there that never came out in the English translated versions of almost a continent-sized island. It can't just be missing. It's probably still there, and we just don't know. Maybe it moved or whatever. And his position where he said it would be in the Atlantic, passing through from where he was in Greece, through out into the sea, into the Atlantic, passing the Pillars of Hercules. Now, once you know the real meaning behind the Pillars of Hercules, it's nothing to do with anything on Spain. It's not the Rock of Gibraltar. It doesn't look anything like a pillar. And once I'd made that breakthrough with the Pillars of Hercules, everything started falling into place. You just had to work out, okay, it was the southern part of the continent that would have the warmest current. It would be the area that Plato said was a plain, and he even mentioned the length of this big flat plain area on the southern part of Atlantis. It's all there, the southern part of Spain.
Just for my own curiosity, because our first interview, you'd mentioned a star of origin. Are any of these that star?
Absolutely. The one that's the face monument correlation.
The face monument. Look at it. Okay, the one up here on the right.
On the Mars picture, the face is top right. Yeah, so it's the one in the top right of the star cluster, and the one that's got the big, bright light lens flare from it.
Right, that's the HD 283271.
Tikal is the Mayan ground zero, one of the biggest, original, oldest cities that had a cluster of 7 temples. And then it led down a causeway to another massive pyramid. And inside that pyramid, strangely enough, is a face monument. And that correlation of that lot is almost identical to that on Mars. It's like building Mars on the ground. It has all three. I've just zoomed in on the closer part of it just to see the similarity.
Wow, I see what you mean.
Next slide. We can go through these quickly. It's just basically showing that same template. Yeah, Stonehenge. Everybody knows Stonehenge. You walk around a nice big stone monument, but you don't get to really understand what's down the road there. The winter-born stoked barrows match the Pleiades. It's a leg of the bull symbol, just like the Egyptians used for the Pleiades. I don't know if you can see the pink lines in the star cluster. It makes like a leg shape.
Yeah, I see that.
It's part of Taurus. So they call it the leg of the bull that was severed from the great bull of the sky. I've got a picture of the invasion of the Planet of the Apes. There it is.
Yeah.
That's probably what happened right about 17,000 years ago. I'd say 15 at the very least. Where poor Neanderthals saw these things in the sky and these people came down. There's three things that could have wiped out Neanderthal, not just disease. They were pushed into lands where there were less hunting and gathering. So the new invaders probably took the food out of their mouths, literally. But this shows how continents move. You'll see the outline of the whole of Spain and Portugal is there on the ocean bed still, and there's a huge big crack that's next to it on the left of it. That is the final push that moved it. So what I want to do in this one is jump ahead now and go through it a little bit quickly. So there's the area where the port city, I believe, is. Plato's Atlantis plain, completely identified. It's all the low areas of Spain. But that is the whole river complex then. If you look closely at it now, we'll zoom in. There's also an area right in the middle of it that we should look at. We'll come back to that just now in the further slide. You can see the fingerprint of the circular canals. Yeah, you can see that circular pattern. That is amazing. Rivers don't just make those neat little patterns. They are very wide. They're sitting in an area of lowest relief that highlighted areas. All the low relief you can see with a LiDAR scan over the area why the rivers formed there. That is the place where the big Grand Canals existed. Now we got to explain how Atlantis moved from where I sit, that mark where it was on the ocean bed. Something forced it into Europe, to crash into Europe and become part of Europe. If you take the Pangea theory, scientists like to believe that these things happen very slowly and naturally, that there's three grand land masses, North America, South America, and Africa. That part of it, which are the biggest parts of it, would slowly just move apart. It's illogical. The amount of energy that is needed to get those items to go in motion needs a major impact theory. And if you look very carefully here, isn't it obvious that there's been a major, let's say a splitting up comet that had a big split up as it broke into the atmosphere and bombarded this area into devastation. And the crustal upthrust, which I'm going to go into next, explains how these land masses all move apart. There's the old mark of Africa. So you've got this impactor that's coming in, got a little island landmass that's sitting there. It's sitting on some weird kind of mud base on top of the rock structure before it even goes to a molten mantle. So next image, it'll impact the earth, and the energy that is released beneath that, okay, this is where it now starts to change. Let's go to the next slide already. That's what I believe happens. It literally lifts up. And this is what the ballistic putty looks like at a low angle impact. You see it goes in, and obviously it's just by pressing against the matter underneath. An impact. That's what it would have looked like initially if you could see through with filters, because it would have been blinding lights. The Earth's crust would have cracked open as well at the same time. The next image. That's now probably after about an hour. It would still be, really raw and looking like that. And half of the ocean of the north would be flowing over everything in the northern hemisphere. You can see the last final cracks that led to the one that just shifted Atlantis eastwards. Next image. And that's where we are today. You can still see the remains of that big crack, and there's a big fissure that comes below Greenland. Not a fissure, I'd call it, let's call it an ocean bed scar. I think it's the best way of looking at it. And that's where we are today. I've got this image available on my website, thehiddenrecords.com. You can go and read all those small labels and look at it very closely. Next image. The scars in the Sahara Desert are so compelling. I was very fortunate to fly over part of it on the way to Egypt on one trip and see this in reality from high altitude. The Pleiades Islands are probably the same size, around about, no, even bigger, I'd say 70 kilometers in the little group cluster that you see there. Next image. And there's back to that mark where it came from, and you see the last crack in the ocean bed floor where it split open and there's still a scar there. That was the last bulge that pushed it into its position. Wow. Next slide. Just shout if you need to ask about anything. This is an old map. It, I believe, shows that it was still an island once upon a time before it became part of Europe. This one is one that was actually reconstructed and drawn in 1979 by a man by Velas Pechos as an expert on ancient Greek. He found the part of the text where it explains the Pleiades Island. And that's the basic star map, Pleiades Islands. While I was working in 2011, looking at all the star programs and going through the island area of Atlantis, there's this field area here that floods yearly right in the middle. They were plain green fields. They were full of crops and being maintained by people that had the right to those parts of the land. Literally overnight, the next refreshing image, it just came in on all the programs, not just Google Earth, it was all of them. They all kind of upgraded at the same sort of time of the month, new images. And then we had this. This is now 4 kilometers wide. That's 3 miles between one side to the other. These areas are indented. They're holding lakes. There's 84 of them. And the amazing thing is this, there's no evidence of any construction. We've asked the Spanish government, and other researchers now are doing it too. And they say, yes, they built it, but we're not going to show you how we did it, or we're not going to show you evidence of it. We built it for a zooplankton research project. Now, get all the zooplankton experts in and ask them about the design of this. They're going to say, this is just a joke. First of all, the area floods. You cross-contaminate between ponds, so there's nothing you can study to make so many ponds. That's a waste of time. The Basculabaro. And there's two of them drawn there, as you can see. And one is the rising of Orion, the other is the setting of Orion. And they've both got the X that marks the spot. There's one little anomaly right in the middle. And as the star constellation rises and then sets, it goes upside down when it sets. That's why the two X that marks the spots are facing each other. And there are 2 dots behind there. Those are the 2 that encode the date. And then you'll see right at the back of it, there are 4 in a row that are actually curved. That was the clue in decoding what was used to get the date. And it's actually one of the early Spanish computer systems made by Siemens to send punch card telex to each other.
It was actually towards the mid-last part of the 2020s, and he said 6, 7, right in there. Yeah. And of course, no one wanted to hear that. They were all ready for the harmonic convergence in 2012 and so on and so forth. But he said, no, they've misread this. So this is interesting. You've come up with pretty much the same thing as he was telling me back in 2000, what would it be, like 10, 11? I think it's 2011. Mm-hmm. So this is really fascinating. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah. Here's what I think it decodes. Orion rising and setting. Orion, you will see in the slide that follows, does have nebular patterns that look like the swastika. Oh, there it is. Yeah, this is the one where the star program shows you Orion, the 4 main outer stars of Orion, that where the belt is in the middle, are those 4 very big dots. The brightest, biggest stars are those 4 dots in the pattern. The swastika we'll see that follows this one will just show the pattern of the swastika, but the X that marks the spot, we're measuring 2 square units. Now, isn't it amazing? They dumped this picture on a field that could be broken up into squares. They were perfectly rectangular. If you split the rectangles into half, like I've done there with the gray lines, you get a grid pattern that matches astronomy. This is explaining why it is shown tilted. They're showing it precisely as we measure astronomy with Orion. It's 2 units distance at that strange angle, and there's an exact match to that little yellow dot that's near the Pleiades.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's how exit marks the spot. It's exactly in place.
That's fascinating. Next slide.
They say they built it. They've stuck by their statement. I want the Spanish government to rethink what they're saying and just embrace how great it is to have what they've got on their land, proving their people, the Basque Nation is one of them, proving humanity is on their land, and they are leading up to a major event. They should embrace all this and be very proud as to what's unfolding. This is proof that these anomalies were made by ground compression. Now, the old crop circle technique is some weird force, pushes down the crop and makes lovely patterns. There's only 1% out of 99 out of 100. So 1% of them are probably real, maybe even less than 1%. There's so many fake ones today that it's a joke to even say you can take crop circles seriously. But this is what really happened, and they're very rare. And this is on a grand scale where it was so powerful, the force used didn't just flatten the crops, it flattened the ground. So what we're seeing now in these pans, if they were excavated with land moving equipment, you would have no trace of the old crop. These crops are regrowing again in their little lines. Those areas were just flattened. We don't have that technology to build these elliptical lakes as such. This next image, I want to prove the swastika first before I show the photograph in astronomy that it is Orion. These are ancient Indus civilization cultures that drew these drawings with the Om symbol. Everybody knows the old Om symbol. It's supposed to be a chanting note.
Right.
This is showing a pictographic value of a bull with its head tilted, the horns and the eye. And if you shoot from Orion's belt through the bull's eye, that's the way you find the X that marks the spot sun star. You'll see on the graphic drawing on the left, it shows follow Orion's belt through the bull's eye. You find a crescent and a sun.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. It is.
There it is. Now, you know what? 3 of these curved, let's call them spiral legs of Orion have already been given names by astronomers with photography. The most obvious one to see, you can even see with binoculars, is the Bow of Orion. It's actually it has big stars in it. It's a bright star concentrated area, the Bow of Orion, bottom right. The Mayans are showing it surrounded by stars and a line that you follow from Orion's belt. See the line in the middle of it on the left part of the picture?
Right.
That's showing that you follow alignment from Orion's belt to get to the one on the right, which is Pleiades, 7 stars, a crescent, and a world, all in one. This is part of that Mayan calendar story that I've decoded in the Alpha Omega book. That's where we end up with. This is where my 3rd book literally follows on from the Atlantis story. What's going to happen in 2027 is probably this. This is a reenactment of what is written in the book of Revelation as the man that introduces himself, that comes from the cosmos, that most people prefer to believe will be the Christ returning, whether it be him passing through time from the year 2,000 years ago through a time wormhole to modern times and speak good English or whatever modern language the teacher would have, is probably unlikely in my opinion. People will say, no, he would have had time to learn it. And he's probably only a few years later than when he was crucified and revived. But whoever it is the important. So whoever this person is, this cosmic messenger, the first thing you're going to need to do is to introduce who you are. And what I think the Revelations text describes is he holds 7 stars in his right hand. That's a way of showing who you are, where you come from, what land you're from.
Right.
The rebuild is obviously my image on the right. The original statue is the one on the left. That was found in the southern part of Spain. Now, Atlantis is ground zero for both books. It's actually best suited as book 2 in its real sort of trilogy. If you were to read them in sequence, it would be exactly in that order, from Hidden Records to Atlantis, then the Alpha Omega, because it's the messenger event that this 2027 date is what we're counting down to.